Welcome to Empathy Stories, the channel where heartfelt tales of love, resilience, and redemption inspire and connect us all. Today, we bring you a gripping story of betrayal, strength, and renewal. Nina's journey from a shattered wedding day to a triumphant reclaiming of her life. Stay with us for every emotional twist and powerful lesson. The morning light filtered through sheer curtains, bathing the room in a soft, golden hue. It was the kind of morning one would imagine for the start of a perfect wedding day. Nina stood in front of a full-length mirror, her reflection shimmering in the soft folds of her ivory wedding gown. The intricate beading caught the light, glinting like tiny stars scattered across her dress. Yet, as stunning as she looked, her chest felt tight, heavy with an invisible weight. Her heart pounded relentlessly, a dull echo of the unease she had carried since the rehearsal dinner the night before. Her best friend Lisa stepped into the room, letting out a gasp. "Nina, you look like a goddess. If Aaron even thinks about hesitating at the altar, I'll march him there myself." Lisa's humor was her usual remedy for Nina's nerves. But today, it barely scratched the surface of her unease. Nina forced a small laugh, adjusting the veil that cascaded over her shoulders. "It's not cold feet," she said, her voice quieter than she intended. Lisa's playful expression shifted to one of concern. "It's Helen, isn't it?" What did she say this time? Helen, Aaron's mother, had made her disdain for Nina's family and traditions abundantly clear. From the floral arrangements to the music, she found fault in every choice Nina made for the wedding. The most painful was Helen's insistence on leaving out the symbolic jumping the broom, a tradition deeply meaningful to Nina and her family. "It's not worth it," Nina said, brushing off Lisa's concern. "She's just old-fashioned." "Old-fashioned? That woman is a menace," Lisa muttered. "If she says one thing today, just one, let it go." Nina interrupted, her voice tight. "This day is supposed to be perfect. I won't let her ruin it." As if on cue, a knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Lisa opened it to reveal Aaron, looking every bit the dashing groom in his tailored tuxedo. Despite his polished appearance, there was tension in his jaw, and his smile felt brittle. "Nina," he said, his eyes scanning her from head to toe. "You look incredible." "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft but guarded. Aaron hesitated. "I wanted to talk to you about something." Lisa shot him a look. "You know it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding, right?" "I'll take my chances," Aaron said with a strained laugh. Stepping into the room, Lisa left reluctantly, muttering about bad omens under her breath. Once they were alone, Aaron sighed and rubbed the back of his neck, a telltale sign of his discomfort. "It's about the ceremony," he began. "My mom's worried about the broom thing. She thinks it might not fit the aesthetic." Nina froze. "The aesthetic?" she repeated, her voice low. "It's just, she's worried it might stand out too much." Aaron continued, his words stumbling over each other. "We can find other ways to honor your culture." Her chest tightened. For months, she had meticulously planned this ceremony to reflect both of their heritages, a union of their lives and families. Now, hours before the ceremony, Aaron was asking her to erase a part of herself to appease his mother. "I see," she said finally, turning back to the mirror to avoid meeting his eyes. "Nina, come on," Aaron said, stepping closer. "It's just one thing. Don't let it ruin the day." The words stung. Nina stayed silent, smoothing her trembling hands over the folds of her dress. After a moment, Aaron kissed her cheek lightly and left the room. The door clicked shut, and the weight in her chest seemed to grow heavier. The ceremony itself unfolded like a picture-perfect scene. The sun shone brightly. Flowers adorned every surface, and the soft strains of a string quartet filled the air. But as Nina walked down the aisle, her heart felt like it was carrying an unbearable load. She caught the furtive glances from Aaron's relatives, the hushed whispers that stopped when her gaze met theirs. When she reached the altar, Aaron smiled at her, but the warmth she once found in his eyes was absent. His hands, gripping hers, felt mechanical, rehearsed. As the ceremony progressed, Nina couldn't help but notice the conspicuous absence of the broom. It was never mentioned, never acknowledged, a silent dismissal of something so dear to her. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, Aaron leaned in for their first kiss as a married couple. The applause was thunderous, and for a fleeting moment, Nina allowed herself to hope. But as they turned to face the crowd, her eyes met Helen's cold, calculating gaze. The older woman's smile was thin, her expression victorious. The chill that ran down Nina's spine confirmed what she already feared. This wasn't the end of the battle. It was only the beginning. The reception hall was breathtaking, every detail polished to perfection. But the grandeur only served to amplify Nina's discomfort. Aaron seemed glued to his phone, whispering with his PR agent at every opportunity. Meanwhile, Helen presided over the event like a queen, her sharp eyes scanning the room with calculated precision. Each glance she threw at Nina felt like a silent judgment. When the time came for the first dance, Nina had to physically drag Aaron away from the bar. "It's time," she said firmly, her voice barely masking her frustration. Aaron nodded absently, as if the dance was just another task to check off his list. As they swayed to the music, Nina leaned into him, searching for a shred of intimacy. But his movements were stiff, his eyes darting around the room as though he were performing for the crowd rather than sharing a moment with his new wife. After the dance, Helen intercepted them with a comment laced in venom. "Lovely dance, dear, though your posture seemed a bit unpolished." Before Nina could respond, Aaron dismissed it with a nervous laugh. "Mom, let's not nitpick. It's her day." But was it? Nina's anger simmered, unspoken but undeniable. As the evening wore on, Helen's sharp words and Aaron's distracted behavior chipped away at her resolve. The final blow came during the speeches when Helen took the microphone and declared, "My son has always been so generous, so willing to give back to those less fortunate. And now, he's extended that generosity to his choice of bride." The room fell silent. Nina's chest tightened as humiliation washed over her. She glanced at Aaron, hoping for support, but he was staring at his plate, avoiding her gaze. Her mind raced. The day she had dreamed of for so long had become a nightmare. Every smile, every carefully rehearsed word, felt like a lie. As applause followed Helen's speech, Nina excused herself and stepped out onto the balcony. The cool night air stung her cheeks as she fought back tears. Inside, the sounds of laughter and celebration continued, oblivious to her pain. When Aaron followed her onto the balcony, his words were dismissive, his tone exasperated. "She was joking," he said. "You're blowing this out of proportion." For Nina, it was the breaking point. She looked at him, a man she thought she knew, and realized how alone she was in this marriage. In that moment, a part of her broke. Her wedding day, once a symbol of hope and unity, had become a stark reminder of what she was willing to sacrifice and what she would no longer tolerate. The reception hall, with its dazzling chandeliers and meticulously arranged centerpieces, buzzed with the sounds of clinking glasses and polite laughter. On the surface, it was the perfect celebration, the kind of wedding reception that could grace the cover of a luxury magazine. But beneath the polished veneer, tension simmered, ready to boil over. Nina stood near the entrance, her posture straight, her smile tight as she greeted well-wishers. Their congratulations felt hollow, more like social obligations than heartfelt words. Every now and then, her gaze would drift to Aaron, who was stationed near the bar, immersed in yet another conversation with his ever-present PR agent. He was supposed to be her husband, her partner on this day, yet he seemed preoccupied, distant. Her mother approached, her warm smile a momentary balm to Nina's frayed nerves. "You doing okay, baby?" she asked, placing a reassuring hand on her daughter's arm. "I'm fine," Nina replied, forcing a brighter smile. But her mother's sharp eyes narrowed, sensing the lie. "Don't let anything ruin this moment," her mother said softly before returning to her table. Nina took a steadying breath, her eyes sweeping over the room. On one side, her family's lively chatter and laughter filled their corner. a stark contrast to Aaron's relatives, who sat stiffly at their tables, barely engaging with one another. Helen, seated near the dance floor, surveyed the scene like a general inspecting her troops, her gaze occasionally landing on Nina with a look that bordered on disdain. The DJ's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the first dance." Nina turned, searching for Aaron, only to find him still deep in conversation. Frustrated, she strode toward him, her heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. "Aaron," she said firmly, her voice low, "it's time for our dance." Aaron blinked, startled, and then nodded. "Of course. Sorry about that." He excused himself and followed her to the center of the room. As the music began, they swayed together, the moment meant to be intimate and romantic. But for Nina, it felt like an elaborate performance. Aaron's hands were stiff, his movements detached, his eyes darted to the crowd, as if gauging their reactions rather than focusing on her. She leaned in closer, trying to salvage the moment, but the distance between them was palpable. When the music ended, applause erupted, and Aaron immediately pulled out his phone. Nina's stomach churned. The man she thought would prioritize her, at least on this day, seemed more preoccupied with maintaining appearances. They returned to their table, but Helen intercepted them, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Lovely dance, dear," she said, her sharp gaze fixed on Nina, "though your posture could use some work." Nina opened her mouth to respond, but Aaron cut in with a nervous laugh. "Mom, let's not nitpick. It's her day." "Is it?" Nina thought bitterly. Every interaction, every pointed comment, reinforced the sinking realization that this day was not hers at all. It was a production, orchestrated by Aaron and his family, with Nina as a reluctant cast member. The evening wore on, and Nina found herself increasingly isolated. Aaron flitted from conversation to conversation, while Helen's cutting remarks and the cold demeanor of his relatives left Nina feeling unwelcome. Even when she attempted to engage with his family, their responses were curt, their smiles forced. It was clear where she stood in their hierarchy, an outsider. The breaking point came during the speeches. Helen, ever poised and polished, took the microphone, her smile razor-sharp. "I just want to say how proud I am of my son," she began, her voice carrying an air of authority. "Aaron has always been so generous, so willing to give back to those less fortunate. And now, he's extended that generosity to his choice of bride." The room fell silent. The words hung in the air like a bitter wind, cutting through Nina with precision. She froze, her chest tightening as humiliation washed over her. Her eyes darted to Aaron, hoping for some sign of support, but he avoided her gaze, staring intently at his plate. Polite applause followed Helen's speech, but Nina barely heard it, her vision blurred, her thoughts a whirlwind of disbelief and anger. This was supposed to be her moment, her celebration of love and partnership. Instead, she had been reduced to a symbol, a prop in someone else's narrative. Unable to endure it any longer, Nina excused herself and stepped out onto the balcony. The cool night air hit her like a slap, but it wasn't enough to clear the storm inside her. She gripped the railing, her breath shallow and uneven. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses from the hall only deepened her sense of isolation. The door behind her creaked open, and Aaron stepped out. "Nina," he began, his tone exasperated. "What are you doing out here?" She turned to face him, her arms crossed tightly. "I needed a moment." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I know my mom could be difficult, but she didn't mean anything by it. She called me a charity case." "Aaron," Nina said, her voice trembling with both hurt and anger. "In front of everyone." She was joking, Aaron replied, his tone dismissive. "Don't take it so seriously." Nina stared at him, disbelief and pain etched across her face. "You're really going to defend her after that?" "I'm not defending her," he said, his voice rising. "I'm just saying you're blowing this out of proportion. Can we not do this right now? We still have guests to entertain." The words cut deeper than any insult Helen had thrown at her. Nina shook her head, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you were on my side." "Aaron, I thought today was about us." "It is," he insisted, though the sincerity in his voice was lacking. "But you're making a scene." Before she could respond, Aaron's frustration boiled over. His voice rose, sharp and cutting. "You need to stop. You're ruining this night." And then, in a moment that would change everything, he raised his hand and struck her across the face. The sound of the slap echoed in the stillness of the night, silencing the murmurs and music inside the hall. Nina staggered back, her hand flying to her stinging cheek. Her mind reeled, struggling to process what had just happened. Aaron's face paled, realization dawning on him too late. "Nina, She cut him off, her voice cold and steady despite the tears welling in her eyes. "Ladies and gentlemen," she called out, stepping back into the hall. The room turned toward her, their faces a mix of shock and confusion. "This wedding is over." Without waiting for a response, she turned and walked out, leaving behind the man she thought she loved and the family that had tried to break her. This day, once filled with promise, had become the moment Nina chose to reclaim her dignity, and she wasn't looking back. The night air was cool and sharp as Nina stepped into the stillness outside the grand reception hall. Her breath uneven, her face burning from both the slap and the humiliation. She gripped her wedding dress in one hand, the other clutching her phone, though she had no desire to answer the barrage of messages lighting up the screen. Each step away from the venue felt like shedding the heavy weight of her heartbreak, though the ache in her chest lingered. "Nina, wait!" Jada's voice called from behind, hurried footsteps echoing in the quiet parking lot. Nina slowed, but didn't turn around. She couldn't bear to face her friend's pity just yet. Jada caught up, her expression a mixture of fury and concern. "What the hell just happened in there? Are you okay?" Nina let out a shaky laugh, tears pooling in her eyes. "Am I okay? I just got slapped by my husband on our wedding day. What do you think?" Jada's eyes narrowed, her jaw tightening. "You're not going back in there, right? Not a chance," Nina said firmly, brushing away tears. "I'm done with him, with his family, with all of it." "Good." Jada opened the car door and gestured for Nina to get in. "Let's get you out of here." As Jada started the car, Nina stared out of the window, watching the grand venue fade into the distance. The place that had once symbolized love and hope now felt like a monument to betrayal. When they arrived at Jada's apartment, Nina collapsed onto the couch, feeling drained but grateful for her friend's unwavering support. Jada placed a steaming mug of tea in Nina's hands and sat beside her. "Whatever you need, I'm here," she said softly. Nina nodded, unable to speak as the weight of the day's events pressed down on her. For the first time, she allowed herself to cry freely, letting the tears wash away the pain and disbelief. The next morning, Nina woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, feeling raw and unsteady. Jada handed her a cup of coffee and a folded pair of sweatpants. "Change into these. Your brother's on his way. We're going to get your stuff from that house, and we're bringing the police." Nina's stomach churned at the thought, but she knew Jada was right. Her wallet, keys, and most of her belongings were still at the house she was supposed to share with Aaron. When her brother Michael arrived, his expression dark with anger, he enveloped her in a protective hug. "You okay?" he asked gruffly. "I will be," she replied, her voice steadier than she felt. The drive to the house was tense. A police cruiser followed closely, ensuring that everything would proceed without incident. When they arrived, Helen stood in the doorway, her arms crossed and her face a mask of condescension. "Nina, dear, you didn't have to bring the police," she said, her tone saccharine. "Aaron isn't even here." "I'm not here for Aaron," Nina said coldly. "I'm here for my things." Helen stepped aside reluctantly, muttering something about dramatics. Nina ignored her and moved through the house with purpose, flanked by Michael and an officer. Jada snapped photos of everything for documentation, her sharp eyes ensuring no detail was missed. In the living room, Nina froze. A photo of her and Aaron from their first vacation together sat on the mantel, a reminder of the man she had thought she was marrying. She stared at it for a moment before placing it face down and turning away. Helen appeared again, her voice dripping with disdain. You're being ridiculous. Nina, this isn't necessary. What's ridiculous? Nina replied, her tone steady. Is your son hitting me in front of everyone? And what's unnecessary is your constant meddling. I'm done. Helen's face flushed, but she said nothing. Nina gathered her things, her movements deliberate, and left without looking back. Back at Jada's apartment, she sank into the couch, her body heavy with exhaustion, but her heart lighter with relief. Michael placed a hand on her shoulder. You did the right thing. Nina, you're out, and you're safe. That's what matters. The days that followed were a blur of legal meetings and quiet moments of reflection. Nina filed for a restraining order and began searching for a new place to live. The outpouring of support from her family and friends reminded her she wasn't alone in her fight to rebuild her life. Jada stayed by her side, offering a steady stream of encouragement and humor to lighten the heaviness of the situation. One evening, as the sun set over the city, Nina sat on Jada's balcony with a journal her mother had gifted her years ago. The leather cover was worn, but the blank pages inside seemed to call to her. She opened it and began to write, her words flowing with a clarity she hadn't felt in days. Today marks the end of a chapter one thought would define my life. Instead, it's the beginning of something new. I've learned that love isn't about sacrifice. It's about respect. And I will never settle for anything less again. As she closed the journal, a small smile formed on her lips. The pain of betrayal still lingered, but it no longer consumed her. For the first time, she felt the stirrings of hope. This wasn't the life she had planned, but it was hers to rebuild, and she was ready to begin anew. As the storyteller, let us take a moment to reflect on the profound lessons woven into Nina's journey and the actions of those around her. Each character represents a unique facet of human experience, offering lessons that resonate deeply. Nina teaches us the strength of self-worth and the courage it takes to reclaim one's dignity in the face of betrayal. Her resilience is a reminder that love without respect is hollow, and that true strength lies in walking away from situations that diminish us, no matter how painful it may seem in the moment. Through her story, we learn the importance of valuing ourselves enough to demand respect, not only from others but also from the relationships we nurture. Aaron's actions highlight the dangers of prioritizing appearances and external validation over genuine connection. His inability to stand up for Nina or prioritize her well-being serves as a cautionary tale about how ambition and complacency can erode the foundations of love. His failure is a reminder that love is not about optics or convenience. It is about mutual respect, empathy, and partnership. Helen, on the other hand, embodies the destructive power of prejudice and manipulation. Her inability to see Nina as an equal, coupled with her constant meddling, demonstrates how unchecked bias and control can alienate even those we claim to care for. Her actions serve as a stark reminder of the importance of humility and the need to respect individuality within relationships. Finally, Jada and Michael remind us of the power of unwavering support and solidarity. Their loyalty and presence in Nina's darkest moments highlight the transformative impact of genuine friendship and familial love, teaching us that we are never truly alone when surrounded by those who care. This story underscores the timeless lessons of resilience, self-respect, and the importance of surrounding ourselves with people who uplift us. Thank you for watching this poignant episode of Empathy Stories. Nina's journey reminds us of the strength within to rise above pain and embrace a brighter future. If this story resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more tales that touch the heart. Together, let's spread empathy and inspire change. See you next time.